Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So, September is finally here. I know technically autumn doesn't start until the end of September, but like, I don't care. To me, it's spooky season, and I'm very excited. I did this video last year, at the beginning of October, but I want to do it this year so you guys have more time to read some of these recommendations if you feel so inclined to. A lot of these books are books that I didn't read during the autumn, but realized were really, really good autumn reads and kind of wish that I had read during the fall season. I think only one, really, two kind of focus on Halloween. The rest are more just overtly autumnal. But yeah, let's dive right into 6 novels perfect for a spooky season read. Now, first up is more of like an honorable mention. I'm recommending this book for this list, not because I necessarily loved this book, because I didn't. This was a 3-star read for me. But because I feel like a lot of people might like this book, and the illustrations and atmosphere alone make this book perfect for reading in the autumn. So this is Slew Foot, A Tale of Bewitchery by Brom. This came out last autumn, I believe. Definitely last year, but I believe it was last autumn. And Brom is a very, very talented artist, and a lot of the allure to his books has to do with some of the imagery that he paints to go alongside his characters, and I've always found it just absolutely beautiful and breathtaking. While I'm not the biggest fan of Brom's writing style, I've read both Slew Foot and Krampus, I do really love his artwork. So I will read the inside flap for y'all. So it says, Connecticut, 1666. An ancient spirit awakens in a dark wood. The wild folk call him father, slayer, protector. The colonists call him Slewfoot, demon, devil. To Abatha, a recently widowed outcast, alone and vulnerable in her pious village, he is the only one she can turn to for help. Together they ignite a battle between pagan and Puritan, one that threatens to destroy the entire village, leaving nothing but ashes and bloodshed in its wake. If it is a devil you seek, then it is a devil you shall have. This terrifying tale of bewitchery features more than 24 of Brom's haunting paintings, fully immersing readers in this wild and unforgiving world. Again, story-wise, not my favorite. Atmosphere, I think it is absolutely perfect for fall, and it is very witch-focused, so if you were into like the Salem witch trials or like the opening scenes in Hocus Pocus, this really will have those vibes. And again, the artwork is absolutely beautiful, and I feel like had Brom paid a little bit more attention to the folklore that he created rather than the weird revenge plot in the story that I felt was very misguided, this book could have been a lot better. So do with that what you will, but kind of my honorable mention. But it is very autumnal. Next up, even more autumnal, but not quite as horror oriented, is one of my favorite novels ever, and that is The Chestnut Man by Soren Sveistrup. I have spoken so many times on my channel about this book. This is my #1 read of 2021. This is my favorite thriller murder mystery of all time. I think it is awesome, fabulous, incredible. The TV show is also amazing. It's very true to the book, but nowhere near as detailed. It was also written by Soren Sveistrup, so that definitely helps. Autumn, 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 autumn. All of this takes place in autumn. So this is set in Copenhagen, so a lot of the novel is very, very focused on the Denmark tradition of creating chestnut men in the autumn. Kids sell them kind of like a lemonade stand. But this is awesome. Tons of fall foliage, farms, creepy woods. I absolutely adore this book. I'm gonna read the back of the book for y'all. But out of every book in this stack, this is definitely the one I recommend the most as a book in general, and it's just an extra added bonus that it is set in fall, and I love this novel. The opening scene is so autumnal, it's so terrifying and so weird and creepy, and read this book and then watch the TV show and see all of it brought to life, and it's fantastic. Anyway, so the back. A psychopath is terrorizing Copenhagen. His calling card is a chestnut man, a handmade doll composed of matchsticks and 2 chestnuts, which he leaves at each bloody crime scene. Examining the dolls, forensics makes a shocking discovery. A fingerprint belonging to a young girl, a government minister's daughter who had been kidnapped and murdered a year ago. A tragic coincidence or something more twisted? To save innocent lives, a pair of detectives must put aside their differences to piece together the Chestnut Man's gruesome clues, because it's clear that the madman is on a mission that is far from over, and no one is safe. Oh, I love this book. I'm just going to leave it at that. Again, out of every book that I talk about on my channel, this is probably the book I recommend the most besides It by Stephen King. So if you have not read it yet and you're looking for a good autumn read that'll keep you on the edge of your seat, it's this book. All right, next up. This is a little bit different than what I usually read, but this is the X Hex by Erin Sterling. This is a romance novel. It's a romance novel about witches, which is really interesting. But what I love about this is it is extremely fall-oriented and very Halloween hyper-focused. And if you are in the mood for like a palate cleanser read, this is definitely a good one to go to because it is still very witchy, very autumnal, very Halloween-oriented, with like a romance kind of tying it all together. I do not like romance novels, but I really, really enjoyed this book. And my biggest regret with this book was not reading it during autumn, like leading up to Halloween. I know there's a sequel coming out at the end of September to this book that I'm really interested in reading as well, because again, I loved the tone and atmosphere of this book, and I thought it was a perfect kind of fun and whimsical, like, Halloween read. Like, when you think Halloween Town, like that whole trilogy back on, like, the Disney Channel when you were kids, that's kind of the vibe that you get with this, but a little more, like, body in the romance. Alright, to the back of the book. Never mix vodka and witchcraft. 9 years ago, Vivian Jones nursed her broken heart like any young witch would. Vodka, weepy music, bubble baths, and a curse on the horrible boyfriend. Sure, Vivi knows she shouldn't use her magic this way, but with only an orchard hayride scented candle on hand, she isn't worried it will cause him anything more than a bad hair day or two. That is, until Reese Penhallow, descendant of the town's ancestors, breaker of hearts, and annoyingly just as gorgeous as he always was, returns to Graves Glen, Georgia. What should be a quick trip to recharge the town's ley lines and make an appearance at the annual fall fair turns disastrously wrong. With one calamity after another striking Reese, Vivi realizes her silly little X Hex may not have been so harmless after all. Suddenly, Graves Glen is under attack from murderous wind-up toys, a pissed-off ghost, and a talking cat with some interesting things to say. Vivi and Reese have to ignore their off-the-charge chemistry to work together to save the town and find a way to break the breakup curse before it's too late. Again, this almost also reminds me a little bit of like Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Not the Netflix show, but the old one with Melissa Joan Hart. Very like funny, comedic, rom-com kind of thing, but super witchy, super Halloween oriented. I think this is a perfect palate cleanser, especially if you're reading a lot of heavy, like very dark and scary stuff during this season. This is a great one to go towards. Okay, next up, I have Dark Across the Bay by Anya Alborn. I did just read this book. I have a whole review on this. I thought this book was set in the summer. It's not. It's set in autumn in an Airbnb in Maine. This book is creepy. I really liked this book because it is again atmospheric, and it is also very like cliche scary movie. This is like a home invasion story, and it'll convince you to never, ever, ever rent an Airbnb in any kind of isolated area. But this to me felt like a very traditional, like, straight to DVD horror movie that becomes like a cult classic hidden gem kind of thing. Again, in a way that the movie, the acting might not be great. You might not love all of the main characters, but the overarching story is really interesting. So let's read the back. The house sits stoic and slightly askew off the coast of Ravenshead. Its off-kilter windows are both charming and disorienting. Its walls are overstuffed bookshelves, both comforting and claustrophobic. When Leo and Lark Parrish arrive at their vacation home with their parents, their mother's idea of a quintessential Maine getaway seems like both a blessing and a curse. Lark, a novice novelist, can't wait to find inspiration at the end of a fog-entombed pier. She'll forgive her mother for forcing her into this non-negotiable holiday, but only if she can find her muse among a lapping rocky shore. And while being trapped in a house with no means of escape is the last thing Leo would consider a good time, especially with parents on the precipice of divorce, he can't help but wonder if maybe the change of scenery will help him shake off the chains of sadness brought on by the death of his closest friend. But what starts off as a relatively benign family trip quickly turns menacing. Leo finds himself face to face with what feels like his best friend reaching out from beyond the grave, and only hours after they arrive, Lark begins to receive sinister texts. and then they both see it. Someone lurking in the shadows of their rental home. Someone who has been expecting them, despite the parishes being 1,000 miles from home. This is a very, very creepy one. I enjoyed it for what it was. I really like Anya Allborn's style of writing, but everybody needs to know that Anya Allborn writes very dark stories, and they usually do not have a happy ending. So I will preface it with that. This is a bit of a downer of a book, but it is a fun, like, scary movie style novel, and I think you will enjoy it, especially with the fall setting. And I love the idea of, like, staying in an Airbnb and it going wrong. I don't know, I feel like I haven't seen that done in film too much. I know that that new film Barbarian with Bill Skarsgård is coming out, and I think that's kind of a similar premise to this. So interested to see how that goes, but yes. This is a fun one, definitely unique, and definitely hits that fall setting. Alright, next up, Mina and the Undead. I will be reading the sequel very, very soon and getting that review up on my channel. I know that has just come out. I've been waiting for spooky season to read the sequel because the first one was so Halloween oriented and just fun and whimsical and spooky. This is a YA book, I will say that. But I really do like Amy McCaw's writing style, and she does such a great job of just capturing the, like, presence of New Orleans in her book, that even though it is a little, like, romance-oriented and very YA, I still thoroughly enjoy this series. So I will read the back of the book for y'all real quick. So it says, New Orleans Fang Fest, 1995. Mina's having a summer to die for. Mina arrives in New Orleans to visit her estranged sister, Libby. She loves nothing more than a creepy horror movie and can't wait to explore the city's darkest secrets. Vampire tours, seedy bars, spooky cemeteries, disturbing local myths. Mina lands a part-time job at a horror movie mansion and meets Jared, Libby's gorgeous housemate and fellow horror enthusiast. But the perfect summer bliss is broken when she stumbles upon the body of a girl with puncture marks on her neck, clutching a lock of hair that suspiciously resembles Libby's. Someone is replicating New Orleans' most brutal supernatural killings. Mina must discover the truth and prove her sister's innocence before she becomes the victim of another myth. A fun romp through 90s pop cultures. Vampires, Buffy, The Crow, need I say more? So yes, this book is set during the summer, though I do associate it a lot more with Halloween, primarily because Mina does work at a haunt. For those of you who do not know, a haunt is typically the name used for, like, the haunted mansions or haunted, asylums, corn mazes, all of those things that pop up during the Halloween season where people dress up in, like, very realistic costumes and, like, pop out as you walk through, kind of like a maze of either a building or, again, a cornfield or whatever. Those were one of my favorite things to go to as a kid. I'm from DC, so we would drive out to the middle of nowhere, Maryland, to this place called Field of Screams, and we would do the haunts there every single year. There were three. There was a small one in a house, there was a cornfield, and then the big one was in the woods, and they would build all of these sets for it, and there was, like, a fake graveyard and, like, a fake fun house and, like, all these, like, creepy sheds, and you would get chased by clowns with chainsaws, and they are absolutely awesome, and you would get scared to death and then go and have s'mores by a fire and drink apple cider, and we did that every single year that I was in high school and several years that I was in college when I would come back home. So just Mina working in the haunt really, really gives me those, like, Halloween vibes, and then the vampire New Orleans culture also heavily, heavily leans on that kind of fun Halloween vibe, which, again, is just something that's kind of always there in New Orleans, but I think really, really resonates when you read it during spooky season. So I really, really enjoyed Mina and the Undead. I thought it was really cool, very, very accurate to what it feels like to be in New Orleans. I loved the 90s nostalgia in it, and it was just a very, very fun book. Very easy to read, not super scary. Again, definitely YA, but if you are like me and you're not a YA fan, you still might really enjoy this book. I know I did. Alright, and last but not least, I had to include a Darcy Coates book in here, and this is the Fallcrop Ghost. For those of you guys who have been on my channel for a while, you know that Darcy Coates is one of my favorite authors. She writes primarily cozy horror, sometimes she does branch out, and her, like, signature thing is haunted house horror. She writes a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them. To me, the Fallcrop Ghost is probably the most spooky season-ish, as it does take place in, like, the middle of, like, an isolated storm in a super haunted house where, like, nothing is as it seems, and just gives you, like, all of the creepy, cliche haunted house vibes without feeling cliche. I read this book in, like, 2 days. I absolutely devoured it. Read the back of the book for y'all. Every family has its secrets. When their mother is hospitalized, Tara and Kyle are sent to stay with their only remaining relatives. Their elderly grandparents seem friendly at first, and the rambling house is full of fun nooks and crannies to explore. But strange things keep happening. A bedroom remains locked at all times. Doors slam and curtains shift when no one is inside. And there are whispers of a sister who drowned in the lake long ago. Something is being hidden away, kept safely out of sight, and the children can't shake the feeling that it's watching them. When a violent storm cuts off their only contact with the outside world, Tara and Kyle must find a way to protect themselves from their increasingly erratic grandparents and from the ghosts that haunt the Fallcroft house. But can they ever hope to escape the unforgivable secret that has ensnared their family for generations? Yeah, so I really thoroughly enjoyed this book. This is probably one of my, like, top 3 favorite Darcy Coates novels of all time, and definitely the one that feels the most autumnal. The Gravekeeper trilogy, I think, would also be up there, just because the vast majority of it is set in graveyards and, like, the haunted woods. But I feel like this is a shorter, briefer, easier read. You don't need to feel tied into a series to read it. And again, it's really short. Like, my copy actually looks longer because it's got, like, 50 pages of short stories at the back. But again, I read this in, like, 2 days. It is a great haunted house story, and I love the perpetually rainy setting. One of my favorite things in autumn is super rainy days. We had one yesterday, which was awesome, where you can just hear, like, the heavy rains and the storms in the background, and that just feels so fall to me, especially when it starts getting dark outside way earlier than it has been, and it cools down, and everything is just great. So yeah, I loved the atmosphere in this, and this is a very spooky, fun read, and I promise you it will have some twists and turns that you do not see coming. Even if it sounds similar to some movies that you may have seen before, it is different, and I do really appreciate what Darcy Coates did with this one. So much fun. And I'm, like, stunned nobody talks about this book as often as a lot of her other books, so, like, if you like Darcy Coates and you haven't read this, read this. And it's cozy horror. It's Darcy Coates, so it's gonna have a happy ending, which is also great. I love Darcy Coates for palate cleansers. I love it for fun, spooky season. I can't wait to read her new novel, Gallows Hill. I just picked that up. Today is, what, the 6th? Or today's the 7th, actually. So it came out yesterday, technically. And I am currently reading Clown in a Cornfield 2. I just started that today. Very stoked on that. Clown in a Cornfield 1 was actually part of my spooky season recommendation reads for last year. And now that the sequel is out, I finally get to read part 2, and I'm enjoying it very much so far. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays, and if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you all in the next one. Mwah.